Chief xenobiologist Vorthak pressed his long, scaled fingers against the control panel of his scanning station. The blue-green planet below spun slowly in the darkness of space. Earth, the natives called it. Another world to catalog. Another species to evaluate for the Dominion's great harvest. He had done this thousands of times before. Survey new worlds, study their dominant species, classify their threat level. It was routine work, but important. The Galactic Dominion had conquered 847 worlds using the same proven method. Find the weakest species first. Harvest them to break the spirit of stronger ones. Simple and effective. The massive survey vessel Eternal Conquest hung in Earth's shadow, invisible to the primitive sensors below. Vorthak's team had spent 3 months studying the humans. Their conclusion was clear. These creatures would submit without meaningful resistance. Another docile species, Vorthak muttered to his assistant. Look at their physical statistics: short lifespan, weak bones, slow healing. They barely live 100 rotations. His scanners showed cities full of humans going about their daily lives. They had no idea death waited above them. Most conquered species lived in blissful ignorance right up until the harvesting began. It was almost merciful. Their technology is centuries behind ours, his assistant noted. They still use chemical rockets. Their computers are massive and slow. They cannot even leave their own star system. Vorthak nodded as he reviewed the behavioral analysis. Humans spent most of their time fighting each other. Nation against nation, tribe against tribe, individual against individual. They could never unite against a common threat. Every world had shown the same pattern. Internal conflict made external conquest easy. War Prince Kelvoth will be pleased, Vorthak said. This harvest should be completed within 1 planetary rotation. Far below on Earth's surface, Dr. Hyunwoo rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the computer screen again. The data made no sense. For the past week, his sensors at the Seoul Institute of Technology had detected strange energy patterns in the upper atmosphere. The readings were unlike anything in the scientific literature. Mi-young, look at this, he called to his colleague across the laboratory. Dr. Mi-young walked over, her coffee cup steaming in the cool morning air. She was one of the best atmospheric physicists in Korea, maybe in the world. If anyone could explain these readings, it would be her. These energy signatures, she said after studying the screen. They look artificial, but nothing we have can produce patterns like this. Hyunwoo nodded. That's what worries me. The intensity is increasing every day. Whatever is up there, it's getting stronger. Across the city, General Dong-hyun sat in his office at Korean Defense Force headquarters. His phone had been ringing all morning. Similar energy readings were being reported from military installations worldwide. American satellites detected them. Russian radar stations tracked them. Chinese monitoring posts recorded them. Something was happening in Earth's upper atmosphere. Something big. Captain Su Jin commanded a destroyer in the Pacific Fleet. Her ship's advanced radar systems had been picking up the same anomalous readings. She had reported them up the chain of command, but received no clear answers. The official response was to maintain current patrol patterns and stay alert, but Su Jin had served in the Navy for 15 years. She knew when something was wrong. The ocean felt different. The air tasted strange. Even the dolphins that usually followed her ship had disappeared. High above them all, Vorthak completed his final assessment. The humans showed all the classic signs of a species ready for harvest. They were physically weak, technologically primitive, and politically divided. Their planet held 3 billion specimens, more than enough to meet the Dominion's current needs. Begin the revelation protocol, he ordered. Across Earth's surface, the sky began to change. Massive shapes appeared where there had been empty air moments before. The Dominion fleet decloaked simultaneously over every major population center on the planet. In Seoul, Hyunwoo and Mi-young stood on the Institute's roof, staring up at the enormous ship hanging motionless above their city. It was larger than anything humans had ever built. Smooth, dark metal stretched for kilometers in every direction. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. First contact, Mi-young whispered. We're not alone. But her excitement died as she realized the implications. The ship's positioning was not exploratory. It was predatory. This was not a peaceful meeting of civilizations. Similar scenes played out across the globe, in New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and hundreds of other cities. Massive alien vessels revealed themselves. Panic spread as quickly as the news. Stock markets crashed. Governments called emergency sessions. Religious leaders declared the end times. Then the message came. Every television, radio, computer, and communication device on Earth simultaneously broadcast the same transmission. The voice spoke in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi, Korean, and dozens of other languages at the same time. Inhabitants of the third planet, you have been selected for biological harvesting by the Galactic Dominion. Your species has been evaluated and classified as suitable for our requirements. Resistance is futile. Compliance will result in painless extraction. Harvesting will begin in 72 of your hours. The message repeated 3 times, then ended. The world fell silent. In his laboratory, Hyun-woo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Biological harvesting. The clinical term made it sound almost reasonable, but he understood what it meant. These aliens planned to use humans like livestock. General Dong-hyun immediately called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. Major Tae-ho, his best strategic planner, was already studying satellite images of the alien ships. How many? Dong-hyun asked. Over 300 vessels worldwide, Tae-ho replied. Each one is at least 5 kilometers long. Our weapons can't even reach them at that altitude. Captain Soo-jin received orders to return her ship to port immediately. As she turned toward Korea's coast, she saw the massive alien vessel hanging over Busan like a dark moon. Her crew stood on deck, staring up at their apparent doom. But something unexpected happened in those first few hours after the message. Instead of panic and surrender, pockets of resistance began to form. Government leaders around the world began talking to each other. Military commanders shared intelligence. Scientists like Hyun-woo and Mi-young started analyzing the alien technology, visible on the ships above. The Dominion had made their first critical error. They had given humanity 72 hours to prepare, 72 hours to study their ships, 72 hours to overcome the shock and start thinking. Most conquered species spent those final hours in despair, accepting their fate. But humans had a fatal flaw that no Dominion xenobiologist had ever properly understood. Humans did not know when to give up. As night fell over Earth, Vorthak reviewed the initial response data. Something was wrong. The humans were not reacting as expected. Instead of mass panic and submission, they were organizing. Communication networks remained active. Military forces were mobilizing rather than surrendering. Curious, he muttered. They appear to be preparing for resistance. His assistant looked up from his own console. Should we begin harvesting early? Prevent them from adapting? Vorthak considered this. The Dominion's schedule was carefully planned. Early harvesting would disrupt operations on other worlds. Besides, what could these primitive creatures possibly do against Dominion technology? No, he decided. Continue as planned. Any resistance they mount will be ineffective against our superior capabilities. It was the Dominion's second critical error. Below on Earth's surface, in laboratories and military bases, in government offices, and civilian homes, humanity began to do what it did best. They adapted. They planned. They refused to accept the impossible. The harvest was still 70 hours away. For the Galactic Dominion, it would prove to be the longest 70 hours in their history of conquest. The harvesting began at exactly sunrise in Seoul. Vorthak watched from his command station as the first Hegemony Guard dropships descended toward the city below. These were the Dominion's elite soldiers, bred for conquest and trained to handle resistance. They expected terrified civilians running in panic. They got something else entirely. As the first dropship touched down in Seoul's central plaza, armed humans emerged from buildings on all sides. They carried primitive weapons, rifles that used chemical propulsion, explosive devices made from household materials, even simple bladed weapons. But they moved with coordination that surprised the Dominion forces. "Contact front," shouted the guard commander as bullets struck his armor. The projectiles were crude, moving at a fraction of light speed. His personal shields easily deflected them. But there were so many humans firing from so many directions that his sensors couldn't track them all. In his laboratory-turned-command center, Dr. Hyunwoo coordinated with resistance groups across the city. Major Taiho had joined his team after the Korean government authorized all military personnel to work with civilian scientists. Together, they had spent the last 72 hours studying the alien ships and preparing for this moment. "The energy shields deflect high-velocity impacts," Hyunwoo reported into his radio. "But they seem designed for energy weapons, not solid projectiles. Keep firing in groups. Overwhelm their defensive systems." Dr. Mi Young looked up from her computer screen. "I'm reading power fluctuations in their shield generators. The constant impact stress is causing system strain." This was information the Dominion had never encountered before. No conquered species had ever analyzed their technology during the actual invasion. Most simply ran in terror or submitted immediately. Across the city, firefighter Ji Hwan led a team of volunteers in hit-and-run attacks against Dominion ground forces. They used the city's underground tunnel system to move unseen, emerging to attack and then vanishing again. The aliens had superior technology, but they didn't know Seoul streets and sewers like the people who lived there. Their armor is strong. "In front," Ji Hwan called to his team as they prepared another ambush. But the joints move differently when they turn. Aim for the connection points. The Dominion soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave properly. Humans should have been running away or surrendering. Instead, they kept attacking from unexpected directions using tactics that made no sense. War Prince. Kelvoth monitored the operation from his flagship above the city. The casualty reports confused him. His forces were suffering losses against a technologically inferior enemy. This had never happened in 800 years of Dominion conquest. "Status report," he demanded from his ground commander. "The humans are not responding to intimidation protocols, gone," came the reply through static-filled communications. "They continue attacking despite obvious technological disadvantage. Request permission to use enhanced firepower." Kelvoth hesitated. Enhanced firepower would reduce the number of specimens available for harvest. But these humans were proving more troublesome than expected. Granted. Eliminate resistance with minimum specimen loss. Meanwhile, in Mumbai, engineer So Young was making a discovery that would change everything. She had been examining pieces of alien technology that had fallen from damaged dropships. Her workshop was filled with primitive analog equipment, old radio sets, mechanical switches, and basic electronic components that most modern engineers considered obsolete. "This is impossible," she muttered, staring at her readings. "Their sensors can't detect our old electronics." She had discovered something the Dominion's advanced AI had never considered. Their quantum-based detection systems were designed to identify sophisticated technology. They looked for digital signatures, quantum processors, and advanced materials. Analog equipment from earlier decades was literally invisible to their sensors. So Young immediately called resistance leaders worldwide. "Use old technology," she told them. "Anything electronic built before the year 2000. Their scanners can't see it." This information spread rapidly through human communication networks. Resistance fighters began using outdated radios, analog computers, and mechanical devices. Suddenly, human communications became invisible to Dominion surveillance. In the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Soo Jin received new orders from Korean Naval Command. Her destroyer squadron was to engage the alien harvesters directly. It seemed like suicide, but her crew volunteered for the mission without hesitation. "We know we can't win," she told her officers, "but maybe we can learn something useful. Maybe we can hurt them enough to matter." Her ships approached the massive Dominion harvester floating above the Korean coast. Her weapons were primitive compared to alien technology, but she had one advantage the Dominion had not expected. Human naval tactics were designed for fighting, other humans who could think and adapt. Alien AI followed predictable patterns. The Harvester's defensive systems activated as her missiles approached. Energy beams destroyed 90% of the incoming projectiles. But Su Jin had fired more missiles than the ship's systems could handle simultaneously. 3 got through, striking the Harvester's lower hull. The damage was minimal, but something important happened. The Harvester changed its position, moving away from the attack. It had felt threatened by primitive human weapons. The crew aboard Su Jin's ship cheered, not because they had won, but because they had proven something crucial. The aliens could be hurt. Back in Seoul, Major Taeho was analyzing battle reports from around the world. Similar resistance was happening everywhere. In New York, police and firefighters were using city infrastructure against alien forces. In London, civilians were coordinating attacks using their knowledge of local geography. In Tokyo, engineers were jamming alien communications with modified broadcast equipment. "They're not adapting to our tactics," Taeho reported to Hyunwoo. "Their AI assumes we'll fight like other species they've conquered, but we don't follow their patterns." Hyunwoo nodded as he studied captured alien equipment. "Look at this technology. It's incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly specialized. Everything is designed for maximum efficiency against expected threats." Dr. Mi-young understood immediately. They've never faced an enemy that fights dirty. Their whole approach assumes logical, predictable responses. The realization was spreading through human resistance networks worldwide. The Dominion was vulnerable to unconventional tactics because they had never needed to defend against them. Every species they had conquered had fought predictably. Humans did not fight predictably. In his command ship, War Prince Kelvoth studied the global situation with growing concern. Resistance was not decreasing as expected. Instead, it was spreading and becoming more coordinated. Human forces were sharing information and adapting their tactics in real time. "This is unprecedented," his tactical officer reported. "The humans are treating this as a learning experience rather than a hopeless battle." Kelvoth had conquered dozens of worlds personally. He knew the patterns. Initial resistance always collapsed within hours as the conquered species realized the futility of fighting superior technology. But these humans seemed to become more determined as they learned more about their enemy. "Casualties?" he asked. 12% loss rate among ground forces, 17% among Harvester crews. Kelvoth's scaled skin turned pale. Those numbers were higher than the Dominion had experienced in the conquest of entire star systems, against a single planet with primitive technology. On Earth's surface, the second phase of human resistance was beginning. Scientists like Hyunwoo and Mi-young were reverse engineering alien technology. Military leaders like General Dong-hyun were coordinating global defense strategies. Engineers like So-young were finding ways to turn human technological limitations into advantages. But most importantly, ordinary humans like firefighter Ji-hwan were refusing to give up. They were learning that the enemy could be hurt, could be confused, and could make mistakes. The Dominion had classified humans as a docile species because they fought among themselves and seemed weak individually. They had failed to understand that internal conflict had made humans very good at fighting, and that apparent weakness came from constantly competing with other humans who were just as clever and determined as they were. As the first day of harvesting ended, Vorthak reviewed the operational reports in his laboratory. The numbers did not match any previous conquest scenario. Human resistance was not only continuing, it was increasing in effectiveness. "Perhaps we should request reinforcements," his assistant suggested nervously. Vorthak rejected the idea immediately. Requesting help against a primitive species would be professionally humiliating. The Dominion High Command would question his competence. Besides, how much trouble could one backward planet possibly cause? "Continue current operations," he ordered. "Increase pressure until their resistance collapses." It was the Dominion's third critical error. They still did not understand what they were really fighting. As night fell over Earth, human resistance leaders gathered in hidden locations worldwide. They shared information, planned new attacks, and prepared for the next day. They had learned something crucial in those first 24 hours. The Dominion could be beaten, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the 3 weeks had passed since the harvesting began. War Prince Kelvoth stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. Human resistance was not only continuing, it was getting stronger. His forces controlled less territory today than they had controlled yesterday. "This is impossible," he said to his tactical advisor. "No species improves during conquest. They weaken, they break, they surrender." But humans were doing none of those things. Instead, they were learning from every battle, adapting to every Dominion tactic, and sharing information across their entire planet in real time. In his mountain hideout outside Seoul, Dr. Hyunwoo had expanded his team to include dozens of scientists and military experts. Major Taeho had become his strategic planning partner, while Dr. Mi-young led efforts to understand alien technology. Their latest discovery would change everything. "Look at this," Mi-young said, pointing to her analysis of captured Dominion equipment. "Their entire technology base assumes quantum coherence. Every system depends on perfect information flow and logical decision trees." Commander Hae-won, a former Special Forces operative who had joined their group, understood the implications immediately. They can't handle chaos. Their systems break down when faced with random, unpredictable actions. This led to the development of what became known as the Chaos Protocol. Instead of fighting the aliens with organized military tactics, humans began using deliberately random strategies. Units would attack at unexpected times, retreat when they were winning, and advance when retreat seemed logical. The effect on Dominion forces was devastating. Their AI could not predict human actions, because human actions followed no predictable pattern. Worse, humans seemed to celebrate this randomness rather than trying to eliminate it. Across the Pacific, Admiral Su-jin was implementing naval chaos protocols with remarkable success. Her fleet would appear in one location, disappear completely, then attack somewhere else entirely. The Dominion's sophisticated tracking systems could not follow ships that deliberately acted in irrational ways. "Today we attacked the Harvester near Japan," she announced to her captains. "Tomorrow we might attack nothing at all. Next week we might attack our own previous position just to confuse them." Her sailors laughed at the absurdity of it, but it worked. Dominion naval forces found themselves constantly out of position, chasing ghosts and responding to threats that vanished as soon as they arrived. In cities worldwide, civilian resistance had evolved beyond simple attacks. Young Mi, an underground organizer in Seoul, had discovered that humans could weaponize their own planet's biodiversity in ways the sterile Dominion worlds had never prepared for. "Release the rats," she ordered her team as they prepared to infiltrate a Dominion supply depot. All of them. The aliens had no experience with Earth's ecosystem. Their sterile ships and clean environments could not handle thousands of small mammals carrying modified tracking devices. Suddenly, every Dominion facility was filled with creatures that their sensors could not distinguish from local wildlife, but which were actually human intelligence assets. In New York, firefighter Ji Hwan had evolved his tactics from simple ambushes to something approaching psychological warfare. His teams would rescue alien soldiers from dangerous situations, treat their wounds, then release them back to their units. "Why?" asked one of his volunteers after they had saved a wounded Dominion guard from a building collapse. "Because now, he has to explain to his commanders why humans saved his life," Ji Hwan replied. "Their whole war plan assumes we're mindless animals. What happens when their soldiers start reporting that the animals show mercy?" This psychological approach was spreading globally. Humans began demonstrating behaviors that the Dominion's xenobiological profiles said were impossible. They showed mercy to enemies, sacrificed strategic advantages for moral principles, and continued fighting even when victory seemed impossible. In Mumbai, engineer So Young had made another breakthrough. By studying captured alien technology with her deliberately primitive tools, she had discovered that Dominion equipment could not adapt to analog interference. Their quantum-based system simply could not process information that came from non-quantum sources. "We can crash their entire command network," she explained during a global conference call with resistance leaders. "But we need every analog device on the planet working together." The plan that emerged was called Operation Stone Age. Humans worldwide began using their oldest, most primitive technology to flood the electromagnetic spectrum with analog signals. Radio operators used equipment from the 1950s. Computer enthusiasts fired up machines from the 1980s. Even museums were asked to activate historical devices. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for Dominion forces. Their quantum communication networks, designed for clean digital environments, could not function in the chaos of analog electromagnetic noise that suddenly surrounded Earth. Dr. Kyung-soo, a quantum physicist who had joined Hyunwoo's team, explained it in simple terms. Imagine trying to have a conversation in a perfectly quiet room, then suddenly being surrounded by thousands of people, all talking at once in languages you've never heard. That's what we've done to their communications. War Prince Kelvoth found himself commanding forces that could barely communicate with each other. Worse, human forces seemed to be thriving in the same electromagnetic chaos that was crippling his technology. How do they coordinate without quantum networks? He demanded from his communications officer. Unknown, sir. They appear to be using point-to-point analog transmissions and physical message systems. Very primitive, but completely immune to our interference. This revelation led to the Dominion's fourth critical error. Kelvoth decided to adapt his tactics to match human primitiveness. He ordered his forces to abandon their advanced coordination systems and fight using simpler methods, but Dominion soldiers were bred and trained for high-tech warfare. When forced to fight like primitives, they became clumsy and ineffective. Humans who had been fighting with primitive methods for their entire evolutionary history easily outmatched them. The turning point came when Commander Haewon led the first successful assault on a Dominion command ship. Her strategy was based on pure human psychology rather than military tactics. "We're going to surrender," she announced to her assault team. They approached the command ship with white flags, hands raised, appearing to give up completely. The Dominion had specific protocols for accepting surrender, designed to be efficient and humane. But those protocols assumed that surrendering enemies would remain passive. Once inside the ship, Haewon's team did something no Dominion protocol had ever anticipated. They continued their mission despite having surrendered. They fought their way to the command center, not to capture it, but to plant analog communication devices that would disrupt the ship's quantum systems from within. Surrender was just transportation, Haewon explained later. They brought us exactly where we needed to be. The psychological impact on Dominion forces was severe. If humans could not be trusted to stay surrendered, then surrender itself became meaningless. Suddenly, Dominion soldiers could never be certain whether any human action was genuine or part of some incomprehensible strategy. As the third month of invasion began, Vorthak finally requested an emergency consultation with Dominion High Command. His reports painted a picture that defied every known principle of conquest science. "The humans have weaponized their own irrationality," he reported. "They use their technological limitations as advantages. They celebrate chaos instead of avoiding it. They show mercy to enemies while simultaneously fighting them more effectively." The response from High Command was swift and dismissive. Impossible. No species behaves this way. Increase harvesting efficiency and complete the mission. But Vorthak knew something that High Command did not yet understand. The Dominion was no longer fighting a harvest operation. They were fighting something they had never encountered in 8 centuries of conquest. They were fighting a species that turned every weakness into a weapon, every defeat into a lesson, and every impossible situation into an opportunity for creative solutions. As reports came in from resistance cells worldwide, one thing became clear to human leaders. They were not just surviving the Dominion invasion, they were winning battles that should have been impossible to win, and more importantly, they were teaching the galaxy's greatest military force something that would haunt the Dominion for generations to come. Sometimes the most advanced solution is no match for the most determined primitives. 6 months after the invasion began, something unprecedented was happening on Earth. Humanity was not only resisting the Dominion, they were pushing them back. In his hidden command center deep in the Korean mountains, Dr. Hyunwoo studied reports that would have seemed like fantasy just months earlier. "We control 40% of Seoul again," Major Taeho announced during their morning briefing. "The aliens are retreating to defensive positions." Dr. Mi-young looked up from her latest analysis of captured alien technology. "I think I know why." Look at these power consumption readings. Their ships are using 3 times more energy than when they arrived. She had discovered something remarkable. Dominion technology was incredibly efficient when everything worked perfectly. But fighting humans had forced them into situations where nothing worked as designed. Their systems were burning through power trying to adapt to human unpredictability. They built machines to fight other machines, explained Dr. Kyung-soo, the quantum physicist who had become their technology expert. Perfect systems fighting. Perfect systems. But we're not perfect. We're messy, chaotic, and random. Their perfection becomes a weakness when fighting imperfection. This led to the development of the primitive superiority doctrine. Human forces began deliberately using the most basic effective tools for every task. If a crossbow could do the job, they used crossbows instead of rifles. If rocks could work, they threw rocks instead of explosives. The psychological effect on Dominion forces was devastating. Their soldiers were dying to weapons that belonged in museums. Worse, they could not explain to their commanders why advanced armor was being penetrated by sharpened sticks, and why energy shields were failing against simple thrown objects. General Dong-hyun had implemented this doctrine across all Korean military forces. Operation Caveman became their official strategy. Instead of trying to match alien technology, they embraced being technologically inferior and turned it into an advantage. Every time we use primitive weapons successfully, he explained to his officers, we prove that their advanced systems are not as superior as they think. We attack their confidence, not just their bodies. In the Pacific, Admiral Soo-jin was experiencing similar success with naval primitive tactics. Her ships now carried catapults alongside modern weapons. They used signal flags instead of radio, when possible. They navigated by stars rather than GPS. The aliens track our electronic signatures, she told her captains. But they have no sensors designed for wooden projectiles launched by mechanical tension. We've made ourselves partially invisible by becoming deliberately backward. Her most successful operation had been the liberation of Busan Harbor, using nothing but fishing boats, hand-thrown explosives, and coordination by flag signals. The Dominion occupation force had been trained to fight modern naval forces, not fishing fleets acting like ancient pirates. Across the world, civilian resistance had evolved into something the Dominion could not categorize. Young Mi's network in Seoul had grown into a citywide intelligence operation that used children as messengers, elderly people as observers, and household pets as unknowing surveillance assets. Their scanners look for communication devices, she explained to new recruits. They don't look for a grandmother knitting coded messages into sweaters, or children playing games that are actually tactical coordination exercises. The aliens had no cultural understanding of human creativity. They could not imagine a species that would turn daily life itself into a weapon of war. In New York, firefighter Ji Hwan had become a master of urban warfare psychology. His latest tactic involved rescuing alien soldiers from dangerous situations, giving them medical care, and then asking them philosophical questions while they recovered. Why are you harvesting us? He would ask wounded Dominion guards. Do you have families? Do you dream at night? Many alien soldiers had never been asked such questions. The Dominion bred them for obedience, not reflection. Exposure to human curiosity and compassion was causing psychological problems in their ranks. Some refused orders, others requested transfers, a few even deserted completely. So Young in Mumbai had made the most significant technological breakthrough yet. By studying alien quantum processors with analog instruments, she had learned to predict their behavioral patterns. More importantly, she had learned how to make them malfunction. Their AI follows logical decision trees, she explained during a global resistance conference call. But we can feed them paradoxical information that crashes their reasoning systems. Her team had developed logic bombs, simple analog devices that transmitted contradictory data to alien quantum systems. When Dominion computers tried to process information like, this statement is false or everything I say is a lie, their perfect logical systems locked up trying to resolve the paradox. Humans live with paradox every day, so Young noted. We're comfortable with contradictions. But their machines demand perfect logical consistency. We can crash their entire fleet with philosophical questions. War Prince Kelvoth was experiencing what Dominion military doctrine said was impossible. A tactical situation that was getting worse instead of better over time. His forces were losing ground daily, not to superior firepower, but to enemy creativity that his training had never prepared him for. "Status report," he demanded from his ground commanders. "Sector 7 has been retaken by enemies using wooden spears and ancient earth war cries," came the reply. Sector 12 fell to an attack consisting entirely of children throwing stones. Sector 15 surrendered after being surrounded by elderly humans who kept asking our soldiers about their personal feelings. Kelvoth's scales turned pale. "Surrendered? To elderly questioners?" "Yes, sir. The humans didn't threaten violence. They just kept asking philosophical questions until our soldiers requested evacuation to escape the psychological pressure." This was beyond Kelvoth's comprehension. In 8 centuries of Dominion conquest, no enemy had ever won battles through curiosity and compassion. It violated everything he knew about warfare. Commander Hei-Wan had meanwhile perfected the art of impossible military tactics. Her latest success involved capturing a Dominion supply depot by having her entire assault force pretend to be lost. Tourists asking for directions. "Excuse me," her soldiers had said to alien guards. "We're looking for the old temple that used to be here. Do you know where it went?" The guards, programmed to respond to direct threats, had no protocols for handling polite lost tourists. While they tried to contact superiors for guidance, Hei-Wan's team had simply walked past them into the facility and taken control. "Politeness is a weapon they cannot defend against," she explained to her troops. "Their entire military doctrine assumes enemies will act like enemies. But what if we act like confused civilians until the exact moment we need to be soldiers?" Dr. Hyunwoo's team had also made a crucial discovery about Dominion psychology. By studying captured alien personnel, they learned that the Dominion's greatest weakness was not technological but mental. "They've been winning for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt to losing," Dr. Mi-young observed. "Every setback causes them to try harder using the same methods that are already failing." This insight led to Operation Escalation Trap. Human forces began deliberately provoking the Dominion into using bigger weapons and more advanced tactics. Each escalation made the aliens more dependent on their technology and less able to think creatively. "Let them bring their most sophisticated systems," General Dong-hyun ordered. "The more complex their response, the more ways we can break it with simple solutions." The strategy worked perfectly. Dominion forces brought in advanced battle computers to counter human unpredictability. Humans responded by having children sing nursery rhymes near the computers until the AI systems crashed, trying to find tactical significance in meaningless songs. The aliens deployed quantum sensors to track human movements. Humans countered by carrying mirrors and singing loudly, creating so much sensor noise that the systems became useless. For every advanced solution the Dominion implemented, humans found a primitive counter that worked better than expected. The invasion entered its 7th month. Vorthak made a disturbing discovery in his laboratory. Human specimens captured in the early days showed significantly different characteristics from humans captured recently. "They're evolving," he reported to War Prince Kelvoth. "Not biologically, but behaviorally. The stress of invasion is making them more creative, more cooperative, and more tactically innovative. Instead of breaking under pressure, humans were becoming more dangerous. They were using the invasion itself as a learning experience, treating each battle as an opportunity to discover new ways to fight. This violated every principle of conquest psychology. Conquered species were supposed to become demoralized and fragmented. Instead, humans were becoming more unified and more capable with each passing day. The Dominion had inadvertently created the perfect training program for developing human military potential. Every alien tactic became a lesson. Every victory became inspiration. Every defeat became motivation for improvement. As reports continued to arrive from around the globe, one fact became undeniable. The Dominion invasion was not conquering humanity. It was making humanity stronger. 1 year after the invasion began, War Prince Kelvoth received the most humiliating order in Dominion military history. High Command was sending reinforcements to help him complete the conquest of a single primitive planet. The message was clear. He had failed where countless other commanders had succeeded, but the situation was worse than High Command understood. Kelvoth was not just failing to conquer Earth, he was losing territory every day to an enemy that should not have been able to fight at all. In the liberated city of Seoul, Dr. Hyun-woo stood in his new laboratory, a former Dominion research facility that human forces had captured 3 months earlier. The irony was not lost on him. They were now using alien equipment to study alien weaknesses. Operation Last Stand begins in 72 hours, he announced to his expanded team. Major Taeho, now promoted to general, had become the coordinator of global human military strategy. Dr. Mi Young led a team of scientists from 12 different countries. Commander Hai Wan commanded special forces units that had achieved legendary status among both human and alien forces. The plan is ambitious, General Taeho admitted, as he reviewed the operational details. We're going to attempt the simultaneous liberation of every major harvesting center on Earth. It seemed impossible. But humans had been achieving impossible things for the past year. They had learned that the word impossible was just another problem to solve creatively. Dr. Kyung-soo had made the breakthrough that made Operation Last Stand possible. By studying captured Dominion command systems, he had discovered that all harvesting centers were connected through a single quantum communication network. If we can overload the network at exactly the right moment, he explained, every harvesting facility will lose coordination simultaneously. They'll be isolated and vulnerable. The plan required perfect timing across 6 continents. Human forces would need to attack dozens of heavily defended facilities at exactly the same moment. Any earlier, and the Dominion would have time to adapt. Any later, and the network would have time to reroute around damaged connections. Admiral Soo-jin commanded the naval component of the operation from her flagship in the Pacific. Her fleet had grown from a handful of destroyers to an international armada of vessels from every nation on Earth. They carried weapons that mixed the most advanced human technology with deliberately primitive systems that alien sensors could not track. Remember, she told her captains during the final briefing, we're not trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to confuse them so completely that they forget how to fight. Her ships carried an arsenal of chaos weapons, signal flares that disrupted alien optical systems, analog radio broadcasts that crashed quantum processors, even trained dolphins equipped with sonar devices that made alien ships think they were under attack by sea monsters. In Mumbai, So-young had perfected her logic bomb technology. Her team had created devices that could transmit philosophical paradoxes directly into alien computer systems. The effect was devastating to AI that demanded logical consistency. Today we ask them questions they cannot answer, she told her technical team. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Can an all-powerful being create a stone too heavy for them to lift? If everything has a cause, what caused the first cause? These questions would have been simple curiosities. To humans, to Dominion AI systems, they were devastating attacks that could shut down entire networks while processors tried to resolve impossible logical contradictions. Young Mi's intelligence network had grown into a planet-wide organization that used everything from carrier pigeons to coded graffiti to coordinate resistance activities. The Dominion had learned to monitor human electronic communications, but they had no defense against information networks that existed entirely outside their technological understanding. Phase 1 begins now, she announced to her operatives, through a system of colored laundry hanging on clotheslines across Seoul. To alien observers, it looked like random domestic activity. To trained human agents, it was a complex tactical communication system. Firefighter Ji Hwan had become something the Dominion had never encountered before, a psychological warfare specialist who used kindness as a weapon. His teams had perfected techniques for breaking alien morale through unexpected compassion and philosophical questioning. Today we offer them tea and ask about their families, he told his volunteers, while they try to understand why their enemies are being nice to them. Our real assault teams will take their positions. The Dominion had no training for handling enemies who attacked with both violence and kindness simultaneously. Their soldiers were beginning to suffer psychological breakdowns from the cognitive dissonance. As Operation Last Stand commenced, human forces demonstrated the full extent of their evolution under pressure. They attacked with coordinated precision that rivaled any military force in the galaxy, but they did it using tactics that no galactic military force could predict or counter. In New York, resistance fighters used the subway system to appear simultaneously at dozens of locations around Dominion facilities. They emerged from manholes, maintenance tunnels, and abandoned stations like an army of mechanical ghosts. In London, human forces attacked a harvesting center using nothing but bicycles, cricket equipment, and an elaborate series of mirrors that reflected sunlight to disrupt alien optical sensors. In Tokyo, the assault began with 10,000 citizens simultaneously playing traditional musical instruments in a pattern that created harmonic frequencies that interfered with alien quantum resonance systems. Each attack was perfectly timed to occur at the exact moment when So-Young's logic bombs would overload the Dominion communication network. The result was chaos beyond anything the aliens had experienced in 8 centuries of conquest. War Prince Kelvoth watched from his flagship as his carefully organized occupation force collapsed in real time. Every harvesting center was under attack simultaneously. His command network was failing as quantum processors crashed under paradoxical information loads. His forces were requesting evacuation from battles they should have been winning easily. "Status report," he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his communications officer replied. "The humans appear to be attacking everywhere at once using weapons that don't exist and tactics that make no sense. Our AI systems are requesting philosophical counseling." That last statement broke something in Kelvoth's mind. In 8 centuries of military service, he had never heard the phrase philosophical counseling used in a battle report. Dr. Hyun-woo monitored the operation from his command center, watching as human forces achieved victory after impossible victory. They were not winning through superior firepower or better technology. They were winning because they had learned to fight a war that existed outside the Dominion's entire understanding of warfare. "Harvesting Center 7 is liberated," reported General Tejo. "The aliens surrendered after our forces asked them to explain the meaning of existence while simultaneously juggling." "Harvesting Center 12 has been abandoned," came another report. "Enemy forces retreated after being offered homemade cookies and asked about their childhood dreams." "Harvesting Center 23 is requesting evacuation due to psychological contamination by human illogic," reported a third team. Admiral Su-jin's naval forces had achieved perhaps the most remarkable victory of all. They had convinced an entire Dominion fleet to retreat by surrounding them with fishing boats playing recorded whale songs at maximum volume. "The aliens think we've trained Earth's marine life to fight for us," she reported with barely contained laughter. "They're requesting immediate withdrawal to avoid biological warfare by Cetacean psychological operations." As the day progressed, the impossible became routine. Human forces were not just winning individual battles, they were liberating entire regions through tactics that would have been considered insane by any conventional military standard. But the most significant victory was psychological. For the first time in Dominion history, their forces were asking questions that had never been asked before. "Why are we fighting these creatures?" one captured alien soldier asked during interrogation. "They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to help us understand ourselves. What is the purpose of harvesting if the harvested species can teach us things we never knew?" asked another. These questions spread through alien ranks like a virus. Dominion soldiers, bred for unquestioning obedience, were beginning to think independently for the first time in their lives. As Operation Last Stand concluded with complete success, Vorthak made his final report to the Dominion High Command. The words he wrote would become legendary in galactic military history. "Request immediate strategic withdrawal from the Sol system. The human species has weaponized concepts that do not exist in our military doctrine. They fight with compassion, think with chaos, and win through failure. Our forces are experiencing psychological evolution after exposure to human logic paradoxes. Recommend classifying humans as a cognito-hazardous species and avoiding all future contact." For the first time in 8 centuries, the Galactic Dominion was retreating from a harvest operation, And for the first time in human history, Earth had defeated an alien invasion not through strength, but through being so genuinely human that their enemies could not comprehend how to fight them. The final battle for Earth began not with weapons but with a message. Supreme Admiral Nexorth of the Galactic Dominion had arrived with the planet-killer vessel World's End, accompanied by the largest fleet in Dominion history. His transmission reached every human communication device on the planet simultaneously. Inhabitants of Earth, your resistance has been noted and documented. You will now surrender unconditionally, or this planet will be sterilized completely. You have one planetary rotation to comply. In his mountain command center, Dr. Hyun-woo received the message with his team of scientists, military leaders, and resistance coordinators. They had known this moment would come. The Dominion's final response to human defiance would be complete destruction. They're going to kill everyone, Dr. Mi-young said quietly as she studied the massive ship hanging in Earth's orbit. Even if we surrender now, they'll probably destroy us anyway. We've embarrassed them too much. General Tae-ho nodded grimly. Their reputation depends on never losing to a primitive species. Either they harvest us or they eliminate us. Those are the only options that preserve their image. But Commander Hae-won was smiling. Actually, I think they've just given us exactly what we need to win. Everyone turned to look at her. Win? Against a planet-killer ship? Think about it, she continued. For the past year, we've been fighting their occupation forces, local commanders who could adapt and learn. But now they've sent their supreme leadership. People who have never experienced failure and don't know how to handle it. Dr. Kyung-soo understood immediately. Supreme Admiral Nexorth is probably the most successful military leader in Dominion history. He's never lost a battle. That makes him psychologically vulnerable to something he's never experienced. Failure, Hyun-woo finished. We don't need to destroy his ship. We need to break his confidence. The plan that emerged was perhaps the most audacious in human military history. Instead of trying to fight the planet-killer ship, they would convince it to leave by demonstrating something that violated every principle of warfare the Dominion understood. They would win by surrendering. Admiral Soo-jin received her orders with disbelief. You want me to ram my flagship into their planet killer? That's suicide. Not ram, Hyun-woo explained. Doc, we're going to surrender our entire fleet to them, board their ships, and then continue fighting from inside their vessels. It was a tactic that existed nowhere in galactic military doctrine. Surrendering forces were supposed to remain surrendered. The concept of surrender as a tactical maneuver, rather than an admission of defeat, was completely alien to Dominion thinking. So Young, in Mumbai, had prepared the technical component of the plan. Her team had created thousands of analog logic bombs disguised as surrender documents. When Dominion computers processed the surrender paperwork, they would also process philosophical questions that would crash their quantum systems. Every surrender document contains the ship's own specifications with one impossible modification, she explained. When their computers try to verify that their ship both exists and doesn't exist simultaneously, their entire network will collapse. Young Mi's intelligence network had prepared the psychological component. Hidden among the surrendering human forces would be agents trained in advanced philosophical warfare. Their mission was to ask Dominion personnel questions that would cause existential crises. What is victory if your enemy chooses to lose, was one of the prepared questions. If you defeat someone who wants to be defeated, who actually won, was another. Firefighter Ji-hwan had trained thousands of volunteers in the art of weaponized kindness. They would surrender to alien forces and then immediately begin offering help, comfort, and genuine friendship to their captors. Nothing breaks a conqueror's spirit faster than having their victims thank them for being conquered, he explained to his teams. As the 24-hour deadline approached, Supreme Admiral Nexorth prepared for what he expected would be the easiest battle of his career. The humans had already begun broadcasting surrender messages. Their fleets were approaching Dominion ships with white flags displayed. Their military leaders were requesting permission to come aboard and formally submit. Standard surrender protocols, he ordered his staff. Process the paperwork, secure the prisoners, and prepare for planetary sterilization. We'll harvest what we can and eliminate the rest. But within hours of accepting the human surrender, Nexorth's flagship was experiencing unprecedented problems. His computer systems were crashing as they tried to process surrender documents that contained logical paradoxes. His crew was requesting psychological counseling after being exposed to human prisoners who thanked them for their capture and asked about their personal feelings. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans in Detention Block 7 have organized a therapy session for our guards. They're helping our soldiers work through their childhood trauma. Detention Block 12 is requesting additional recreational supplies," reported another officer. "The human prisoners have taught our guards 17 different games and want to organize a tournament, sir," a third officer added nervously. "The humans in Detention Block 3 have asked permission to redecorate their cells to make them more comfortable for the guards who have to visit. They're concerned about our working conditions." Nexorth felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service: complete psychological disorientation. His prisoners were treating their captivity as an opportunity to help their captors. They had turned surrender into a form of psychological warfare. On Earth's surface, the second phase of the plan was already in motion. Dr. Hyun Woo and his team had remained hidden during the surrender, allowing them to maintain coordination of global resistance activities. As Dominion forces celebrated their victory, human forces emerged from concealment and began retaking their planet. "They think they've won," General Tae-ho reported from his hidden command post. "Half their forces are in orbit processing surrendered humans. The other half are gathering surrender documents. They have almost no one left guarding their ground installations." The liberation of Earth proceeded with shocking speed. Dominion forces, distracted by the complexity of managing millions of surrendered humans who refused to act like proper prisoners, found themselves losing control of the planet they had just conquered. Admiral Sujin's naval forces had achieved the impossible. After surrendering and being brought aboard Dominion ships as prisoners, they had somehow gained control of significant portions of the alien fleet. Not through violence, but through what could only be described as aggressive helpfulness. "We convinced them that we could serve their ships more efficiently than their own crew," she reported from the bridge of a captured Dominion cruiser. "They put us to work maintaining their systems, and we accidentally improved their efficiency by 300% while installing analog logic bombs in every computer core." So Young's technical team had achieved complete success. Every Dominion ship that had processed human surrender documents was now experiencing cascading system failures, as their quantum computers tried to resolve impossible logical contradictions embedded in the paperwork. "They're requesting technical support to fix problems they don't understand," she reported with satisfaction. "Their most advanced AI systems are asking for philosophy textbooks to understand what went wrong." But the greatest success was psychological. Young Mi's agents had spread throughout the Dominion fleet, and their impact was beyond anything the planners had hoped for. "Sir," Nexorth's chief psychologist reported, "we're experiencing an epidemic of existential questioning among the crew. The human prisoners keep asking our soldiers why they fight, what they hope to achieve, and whether they're happy with their lives. 700 crew members have requested transfers to non-combat duties. 200 have asked for early retirement. 36 have requested permission to join the human resistance." This was the moment when Supreme Admiral Nexorth realized the true scope of his defeat. The humans had not just resisted the Dominion, they had converted Dominion soldiers to their cause through nothing more than genuine kindness and philosophical curiosity. "All units prepare for immediate withdrawal," he ordered. "Sir?" his tactical officer asked in confusion. "We have total military superiority. The planet is defenseless." "No," Nexorth replied, staring at the reports of psychological contamination spreading through his fleet. "We have technological superiority. But these humans have something we don't understand and can't defeat. They've weaponized concepts that don't exist in our military doctrine." His final report to Dominion High Command would become required reading at every military academy in the galaxy. The species on the third planet of the Sol system has achieved victory through methods that do not exist in our understanding of warfare. They surrender in order to attack. They lose battles in order to win wars. They treat their enemies with such genuine kindness that our soldiers voluntarily switch sides. Most critically, they have infected our forces with something our xenobiologists call philosophical curiosity. Our soldiers are beginning to ask questions about the purpose of conquest, the meaning of victory, and the value of individual life. These concepts are spreading through our ranks like a virus. I am ordering immediate withdrawal of all due.